2.
Unlike Roseanne, I am not an artist. I got a D in art in seventh grade. I guess that Mrs. McKinley, my art teacher, didn't think I had much promise, or she didn't like my attitude. Either way, she wasn't wrong. I dutifully glued pieces of brightly colored tissue paper to some cardboard, but my heart wasn't in it. Mrs. McKinley knew that. But I've always liked to travel. And one thing you're supposed to do when you travel, like I agree with Roseanne, is go to famous art museums. Oh shoot, I didn't start my share. Um, I can't believe it. Oh, here it is. You're supposed to do is go to famous art museums. So over the years, I found myself walking through the Prado in Madrid, the Victoria and Albert in London, the Met in New York City, admiring the abundant masterpieces. And yet, if I'm honest, I always came out feeling that I was the same D student who went in. I had seen a lot of pretty pictures, but what had I actually learned? Especially, what had I learned that would stick with me? Then, a couple of years ago, Rachel and I went to Paris, and I thought this time I want it to be different. I want to go into the Louvre and come out with at least one idea that I could hang on to. For some reason, I decided that I wanted to know something about romantic art. It may have been because I wanted to understand why romantic art is not the same thing as art about people falling in love. I was pretty sure that it isn't, but I wanted to understand why. I had some time before our trip, and so I read about it. The first thing I learned is that romantic art is best understood in relation to classical art, because that is what it was a response to. Classical art emphasizes order, balance, the pursuit of the ideal, rooted in tradition and rationality that comes from ancient Greece and Rome. It values symmetry, clarity, and restraint. With its focus on harmony, structure, and proportion, classic art seeks beauty through simplicity, control, and a calm, noble presence. Classical art also has some overlap with mathematics. There is a special number that has been known and studied since the ancient Greeks called the golden ratio. It is defined so that a rectangle which has that ratio has a rectangle with the same ratio when a square is removed. That's saying that the ratio of the size of the total rectangle you're looking at, both the blue and the pink, is the same ratio as just the pink rectangle. And there's only one ratio that makes that true, and that is called the golden ratio, and it has a value of about 1.618. The Greeks and many since then have believed that the golden ratio can be found in the most beautiful art. Here are some examples of some paintings that are considered classical. The Death of Socrates. Look at the noble expression on Socrates' face. And also look at how the painting is divided between what is to the left of Socrates, what our left of Socrates, and what is to the right. And it is in, so you see there's a line separating the painting from the left side and the right side. And it just so happens that line splits the painting in the proportion of the golden ratio. Now, here's another painting, The Oath of the Horatii. Look at how noble the Horatii are in this painting. But if we split this painting between the men on the left and the women on the right, we see that it is also has the same ratio, the same golden ratio. Romantic art, on the other hand, is driven by emotion, imagination, and a connection to nature. It embraces passion, mystery, and the sublime, often with drama and storms and turmoil to evoke a sense of awe. Unlike the restraint of classical art, Romanticism celebrates individuality, intensity, and rebellion, exploring the darkness, longing, and spiritual depth of the human experience. In the Louvre, I looked for some paintings that I had read about as examples of romantic art. One was called Liberty Leading the People by Eugene Delacroix. It shows a woman holding a French flag, leading citizens trampling over the bodies of the fallen during the July Revolution of 1830. It was dramatic, passionate, full of movement, très romantique. Another was The Raft of the Medusa by Theodore Géricault, which depicts the survivors of a shipwreck off the coast of Africa in 1816, trying desperately to stay alive on an overcrowded raft, many unsuccessfully. At least 150 people were adrift on that raft, and all but 15 died in 13 days before they were rescued. Those who survived suffered starvation and dehydration, and some practiced cannibalism. Géricault wanted people to feel what it was like to be one of those, and so he interviewed two of the survivors. He constructed a detailed scale model of the raft, and he visited hospitals and morgues in order to see the color and the texture of the flesh of the dying and the dead. When I left the Louvre that day, I felt that I had learned something about art. What Mrs. McKinley would have thought about it is something I will never know. But I felt that I had taken a little of the tarnish of that D and it had worn off, and I hadn't had to glue anything to anything. For the next step in my artistic journey, it was time for a trip to Cleveland. Rachel and I spent a few days in Ohio in March and April, and one of the places that we visited was the Cleveland Museum of Art, so I could test myself to see if I could really recognize romantic paintings. So let's have a look at some of the paintings I saw. This is the Cleveland Museum of Art. Let's start with The Ruin by the Sea, a painting that contrasts the awesome power of nature, the clouds, the rough sea, the bending cypress trees, with the desolate ruined building, reminding us of our own mortality. From there, I moved on to a painting called David, Oh, that I had wings for like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest, which is based on the 55th Psalm in the Bible. King David here has just learned of the death of his beloved son Absalom and has thrown off his crown and sits consumed by his grief as he gazes out at this wild scene of nature. Then Dante and Virgil meeting the shades of Francesca da Rimini and Paolo. This is based on a true story. Francesca da Rimini wanted to marry Paolo Malatesta, but their families insisted that she marry Paolo's older brother Giovanni. One day, Giovanni went out hunting, and Paolo and Francesca enjoyed each other's company while reading a story about Lancelot and Guinevere. They got excited, and they began to enjoy each other's company a little too much. Giovanni came back from the hunt, found them together, and murdered both of them. According to Dante, they are together forever in the second circle of hell, being tossed about in a great whirlwind like a huge hurricane. The thing to remember here is that they were not to get together to comfort each other, and that it is not true that their love was so strong that even hell couldn't keep them apart. That's that other kind of romantic thinking, the lovey-dovey kind. For Dante, they were together in hell not to comfort each other, but to torture each other. They have no bodies anymore, and seeing each other all the time and for eternity is a constant reminder of the mistake they made and how they are never going to stop being punished for it. That agony and that grief are what this romantic painting is expressing. So what's next? There are plenty more romantic paintings that I could go out and find, but there are also other artistic genres to explore. When I do, I'll be sure to give another speech about it. Fellow Toastmasters,